Now, what does a distinction mean? I'm going to use that word a lot tonight. What is a distinction? Well, if you were an African tribesman looking at your brown cattle, you would see 25 different kinds of brown. Whereas if you're not an African tribesman, if you don't know anything about cattle and you look at the cattle, what you see is brown cattle. They're all brown. You know, one's a little lighter, one's a little darker, but they're essentially all brown. But if you're a herdsman, an African herdsman, and you look at that same cattle, you see 25 distinctly different kinds of brown. And you can tell from which kind of brown what the health of your cattle is, and how long your cattle can go before you need to get them to water again, and what kind of feed your cattle needs, and whether your cattle is pregnant or not pregnant, whether your cattle's in heat or not in heat, etc., 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 etc. So you see, if you're not an African herdsman, the hell's the difference what 25 different kinds of brown? They're brown cattle. That's good enough for you and me. But if I took the African herdsman and I brought him here and showed him an automobile, he would say automobile. It's an automobile. That's all. It's an automobile. It takes you from one place to the other. And he would get in and he might grab the rearview mirror and start steering the automobile with the rearview mirror. Because what's the difference? It's an automobile, isn't it? You steer the thing. What's the difference what you steer it with? See, for him, those distinctions are not important. But I want to show you what happens when you don't make distinctions. When you don't make distinctions, you wind up driving your automobile down the highway of life with your hands on the rearview mirror instead of on the steering wheel, and you have a lot of accidents. And a whole big explanation about how driving is very tough. So you talk to people and they'll tell you how tough life is. Life is tough. Now some people say life is tough and it's terrible to me. And some people say life is tough and I'm tough and therefore I'm good in life. Or some other nonsense. You know, people have all... But the point is life is very tough. Or it's this, that, or the other thing. So that comes from not making the necessary distinctions.
In the next section, Werner makes a distinction between two different kinds of knowledge, knowing by experiencing and knowing by conceptualization. He explores the relationship between these two ways of knowing, beginning with the more immediate, the domain of experience.
Now we're going to develop a model of communication, but we're not going to believe anything or figure anything out. We're going to do it scientifically, with no leaps of faith, no believing anything. We're going to start out with what we got right here. So what you got right here is the pressure of the chair on your backside. That's absolutely immediate for you. That's right there, right now. So let us say that there's a domain of knowledge, called experience. We'll start out with the premise experience is. We'll start out with that premise because it's the most immediate, direct thing available to you. You don't need to figure anything out. You don't need a nothing. You just are. See, it's like start out with you are. Experiencing. So that's the pressure of the chair, the thoughts going through your mind, your feelings, sense of temperature, whatever. The body sensations, the emotions. Whatever your experiences are right now, that's where we're going to start this model. And we're going to say that people can know things experientially. It's like if you read a book on riding a bicycle. Can you ride a bicycle? No. If you sit on a bicycle and fall off and get back up and sit on and fall off and get back up and sit and fall off and get back up and sit and fall off, if you do that long enough, can you ride a bicycle? Yes, most people can. Do they know how to ride a bicycle? No, if you mean could they write the book on how to ride a bicycle? No, if you mean can they explain how to ride a bicycle? Yes, if you mean by do they know how to ride a bicycle that they can sit on the bicycle and ride it. So there's clearly distinct domains of knowing. So now we want to do an experiment. We want to do this experiment very rapidly, and we want to do the experiment. Now, some people don't do the experiment. They think about the experiment. And I want you to know that when you think about doing experiments, you get a different experimental data than when you do the experiments. So none of this is going to make any sense to you if you think about the experiment. You actually have to do it, because that's what you need, that data. So here's the experiment. In a moment, I'm going to tell you to describe to yourself what you are experiencing in that moment. Because experiencing, this domain of experiencing, is right now, 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 right now. Experience happens like that, doesn't it? It's right now, and 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 right now. It's like that. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to describe to yourself what you're experiencing right now. And if you would, do that. Describe yourself what you're experiencing right now. So, do that right now. What are you experiencing right now? Now stop. Because some of you are thinking about the experiment and not doing it. You don't get the data unless you do it. Describe yourself what you're experiencing right now. Go ahead. Right now. Okay, stop. That's enough data. Everybody failed to do what I asked them to do if they really did the experiment. What you discovered is that you cannot describe what you're experiencing right now. Because by the time you stopped to describe it, it was not what you were experiencing right now. It is what you were experiencing a moment ago. Right? So if you actually did the experiment, you know now, unequivocally, that you cannot describe what you are experiencing. You can only describe what you were experiencing. And it's worse than that. You didn't only fail to describe what you are experiencing, you didn't even describe what you were experiencing. Because what you were experiencing no longer exists as an experience. It's disappeared as an experience. It is now a memory of an experience. But you see, most people don't make any distinction between an experience and a memory of an experience. They treat them both the same. Because most people are ignorant. And what's worse, they don't know that they're ignorant. That's called blindness. To not know is one thing. To not know that you don't know, that's tragic. You don't know, and you didn't know that you didn't know, that you weren't making a distinction between experience and memories of experience. And your life reflects it. What do I mean by that? Well, first off, let's tease out the model, because now we have experience and we have the representation of experience, so we've got two domains of knowing. We've got experience and the memory or the representation of experience. Two domains of knowing. So by starting off with nothing more complex than experience, we've already, without any leaps of faith, without having to believe anything, without having to accept anything, we've demonstrated to ourselves that out of experience comes representation of experience, and you and I, for the most part, do not make any distinction between the two. So, for instance, if I say, do you love your wife? You say, oh, yeah, I love my wife. But you don't mean I love my wife. See, when you say I love you to your wife, that's not what you mean. You don't really mean, when you say I love you to your wife, you don't really mean I love you. What you really mean is I live my life consistent with the concept, I love you. But the experience is rare, and I don't even make the distinction between the experience and the concept. See, all experience, because of the way you and I are constructed, devolves the concept. Concept is a representation of the thing itself. See, you know, when you have the experience, I love you, it turns your life on, you feel really alive, things look beautiful, it affects your whole life. Is that what's going on? Or is what's going on is you and I are living with the concept, I love you? See, I behave in such a way, and I try to feel in such a way, and I try to see in such a way, and I try to act in such a way as to be consistent with the concept, I love you, but I don't have the experience very much. And you want to know what? It bothers me. Because my experiences are inconsistent with my concepts, and sometimes I feel guilty about it. See, I can put a whole human life together with those two notions, and just those two notions, and just by making those two domains distinct, you can suddenly see the labyrinth in which most people live their lives with their relationship with the person they say, I love you to. See, they don't know why they don't feel it anymore. Why the excitement is not there. Why the being turned on is not there. Why the aliveness is not there. A lot of serious faces in this room now. So I tell you that a lot of that is nothing more than the lack of the distinction. I just said an amazing thing. Did you hear what I said? I said, making a distinction in domains of knowledge can transform the quality of your life, and you can do it like that. You already did it. It's over. Go home. No, not yet. So you and I just made a distinction between knowledge as experience and knowledge as concept. And one of the things that's true is experience always devolves. Experience always devolves into concept. So the instant you get something as an experience, right away it becomes a concept, doesn't it? Instantly. As a matter of fact, what can you do about experiencing? You can't do anything about it. The instant you try to notice it, see, the instant it's worse than you can't describe your experience, you can't do anything with your experience. Because the minute you try to notice what you're experiencing, it isn't what you're experiencing, it's what you were experiencing, and it isn't what you were experiencing. It's the concept of what you were experiencing, and the two things are different. You know when you go into the restaurant, you read the menu? You eat the menu. No kidding. People eat the menu because they don't make any distinction between the meal and the menu. And it makes them ignorant. And not only that, they don't know that they're ignorant, so they're blind. Now, what really happens is that the concept then begins to determine the experience. So when you meet somebody, you don't meet them freshly, authentically, openly. You don't say, this person. No, you say, let's see, now, you look like somebody I knew over there, and let's see, you have this on, so you must be like that, and you have gray hair, so you must be like this, and you have, and you're sitting with that gentleman, so if you're sitting with that gentleman, then you got to be like that, and so on and so forth. See, what happens is experience devolves into concept, and concept begins to determine experience. And a conceptually determined experience reinforces the concept. And the reinforced concept more fully dominates the experience. And the more fully dominated experience, you got the stuff that people who are good at going through the motions got. You got security and position and reputation. You might even be an expert, an authority, a world figure, looked up to by everyone, etc., 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 etc. Whatever you think is good. All of that's possible functioning in this vicious circle where experience devolves to concept, concept begins to dominate experience, the dominated experience reinforces the concept, and you've got a vicious circle. Then people don't know why their achievements don't really nurture them. Forgotten who I was talking to. It was just a little while ago. Sorry, I can't remember. It'll take me too long. But they were talking about didn't mean anything. I mean, what they'd achieved didn't mean anything. I said, oh, and that's not quite true. It means something for a week or two. You know, when you become the vice president or the president or whatever you become, it's great for about a week or two. Then you've got to pretend it's great. See, then you've got to live after that with the concept that being the whatever it is you are is great. You've got to act like it's great and talk like it's great and smile like it's great and all those things. But it's all eating the menu. You don't get to participate in the meal. So all modern psychotherapeutic methods work because they break the hold of concept on experience so that people can experience directly and authentically. And it's wonderful. I mean, it really turns people on. You come from a really well-done encounter group with a really good leader, and you walk out. First off, you walk outside the door and there's a tree there, but it's not a tree. It's a tree. You know, like it's really a tree. And you get home, and it's not your wife. It's this is the woman I'm married to. You see, like that. And the people have had that experience. You don't need to go to an encounter group to do it. Sometimes people fall down and it happens to them. But not often. So the problem with that is that, well, then you have this wonderful experience, and that devolves into concept, and the concept begins to determine your experience of the person, and the conceptually determined experience reinforces the concept. The reinforced concept more fully dominates the experience. You're back in the vicious circle.
Now Werner goes to the blackboard to expand on the model he's developed so far. He introduces a way of knowing beyond the vicious circle of concept and experience. It's a realm in which experience is created by yourself, rather than determined by the circumstances of your life.
What's missing from up there is being. B-E-I-N-G, being. What's missing from up there is the domain of context. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is very difficult to grasp. And most people are never going to grasp it. Now you need to decide whether you're going to be one of the most people or one of the few people who are going to grasp it. And it's up to you. I don't have anything to do with it. That's your choice. You also need to know that a hell of a lot of what you can't grasp is nevertheless true. And some of it even makes a difference. And I'm suggesting to you that this is one of those. This is the domain in which we're good at communicating, this representational, conceptual domain. Do you ever meet anybody who couldn't explain everything? Everybody I know has something to say about everything. Do you ever notice that people's explanations don't make a damn bit of difference? Do you ever notice that most people don't notice that? Well, I didn't do it, but you see, I couldn't do it because what happened was, nobody notices it. What made a difference is that they didn't do it. And why they didn't do it doesn't make any difference. But people don't notice that. They think that that makes a difference. They must think it makes a difference. They spend most of their time going So, we can all communicate readily in the area of representation, in the area of concepts, and our lives look like it. With a lot of skill, there are people who can communicate in the experiential domain. They're called poets for the most part. But, you see, if this is the domain of concept, and this domain is the domain of evoking, so that a skillful poet can, without representing the experience which he or she wants to communicate, literally evoke that experience in the listener. Think about it for a minute. If you've ever been to a great movie, a great play, great music, that's all in the experiential domain, not in the conceptual domain, for the most part. Without ever saying love, a poem which is effective can elicit in you the experience of love without ever using the word. See, without ever representing it, it can actually evoke it. Without drawing up the concepts, it can evoke the experience. So we're all good at the conceptual realm of language. Some of us have some skill in the experiential realm of language, but the realm which I'm talking about now, the creative realm, the being realm, the generative realm, the contextual realm, none of us knows anything about that. Why? Because it's very difficult. Because it's hard to understand. As a matter of fact, it's almost impossible to understand. What I mean by understand is that you don't represent it or evoke it. And that's about all you got room for. So fine, I understand I can't understand everything. So I'm going to get it experientially. No! There's another distinction of communication. There's another distinction of knowledge. Another distinction of being other than the two I've got up here. And the other one is damn difficult. Because it can't be communicated conceptually. I need to interact with you in such a way that I provide for you the opportunity to create for yourself another domain of knowing, communicating, and being. Specifically, the domain of calling forth, of generating. The domain of being. The domain of self. And it needs to be distinct. I want to read something to you. This one is Ludwig Wittgenstein. Was probably one of the 2 or 3 great philosophers of this century. He said a thing which is really remarkable. I want to tell you about this, a very beautiful quotation. I first heard it, and many of you will have heard it, with the last line of the quotation. And the last line is, whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent. Somebody once said that to me, that quotation. I looked it up, you see. That's why I looked it up, because somebody said it to me once. They were trying to tell me to shut up. So I looked it up. And the quotation doesn't mean shut up. It means something very powerful, something fundamentally powerful. Here's what the whole quotation is. This is one of the most eminent philosophers of our time speaking, of this century. My propositions serve as elucidations in the following way. Anyone who understands me eventually recognizes them as nonsensical when he has used them as steps to climb up beyond them. He must, so to speak, throw away the ladder after he's climbed up on it. He must surmount these propositions, then he sees the world rightly. Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent. So you see, my understanding of that is that you and I are now communicating in a realm in which something cannot pass between you and me in order for the communication to occur. Because what passes between you and me will in this realm ultimately be seen to be nonsensical. So that nothing that I'm saying to you has any sense to it. It doesn't make any difference what I'm saying. But if you can stand on what I'm saying, if you can climb on it and stand on it and look out for yourself, what you see can transform the quality of your life. See, this is strange communicating. I'm not wanting to represent something, to conceptualize something, for you to leave with a concept, for you to leave remembering something, a slogan, a tip. I'm not trying to give you a rule to live by or a principle to live by or laws. I'm wanting to give you the space, the opportunity to recognize something about yourself which previously you were not making a distinction about. You were not distinguishing yourself as a being capable of calling forth. You still aren't quite, because you aren't quite sure what I mean by that. But we've gotten pretty damn deeply into the conversation in a very short period of time. In a very short period of time, we've gotten to the heart of what it means to be a human being. And it has to do not with something you and I don't know. It has to do with ways of knowing which you and I have not distinguished heretofore. The mere distinguishing of which brings them into existence. Now let me show you what happens. If you have a domain of knowledge which is generated, a way of being which is generated, if you can create context for your life, then your experience is not conceptually or circumstantially derived. Your experience of life ceases to be a function of your circumstances, of your concepts, of what you believe, and it begins to be a function of, a reflection of what you're generating, what you're creating of your own being. And now the moments of experiencing, see, it would be like you don't go to the relationship with your wife trying to get love out of it. It's like you go to the relationship with your wife having created a context of love, and the relationship becomes a place in which to experience and express the context which you've created. And that begins to move the circumstances around, so that the circumstances, what do I mean by circumstances? Well, your memory of your feelings, your memory of your attitudes, your memory of your bodily sensations, how you move and walk and feel and all that stuff, all the names you give to that, see, that all starts to get reorganized to be consistent with what you created. The love that you created, using this example of, I love my wife. But you see, this is applicable to all life, not just to the relationship which is represented by the words, I love you. So, I'm saying that you and I have not made a distinction of domains. Like, you know all the books you read? Did you ever see one in the front of the book that said, this book is not about real life? This book is actually about the symbols of real life. And caution to the reader, the world of symbols is not the same as the world of reality. Do you ever see that in any one of the books, anybody in the room? No, neither have I. Why? Because nobody makes the distinction between experience and concept. Nobody makes the distinction between the real thing and the representation of the real thing. And most poor suckers can't figure out why life stinks. Now, what more do you need to know than that you confuse the menu for the meal? If I told you about a human being, that this human being confused the menu for the meal, that is to say that this human being did not make a distinction between the symbols of love and love, did not make a distinction between the symbols of satisfaction and satisfaction, did not make the distinction between the symbols of themselves, their own being and their own being, their own selves, what would you tell me about them? You'd say that person's in trouble. Now, everybody knows who we're talking about, right? See, what you and I call good times is in contrast to the way this planet looks, nothing. Nothing compared to what could be. What you and I think is what you and I think is a life well lived, it's truly nothing in contrast to what could actually happen. And you know something? There's not anybody in the room who doesn't know that. See, most people don't know who the hell they are. They really do not know who they are. They all think they know who they are. You ask some people who they are, and they reach in their wallet and give you their card. I always have to balance, in an audience, you don't want to be too bad. I don't want to say too bad things. But I would really like you to know that you don't know who you are. See, it comes out as an attack, doesn't it? And I really don't, I want it to come out as an opportunity. If you've put it together as well as you've put it together without knowing who you are, what could happen if you really knew who you were? I always think that's exciting. Every once in a while I realize, wait a second, you phony. You don't know who you are. You're pretending to be this, that, or the other thing. Is that who you really are? I always get that little twinge of, ooh. But then wait a second, it's not so bad. It's not so bad. So if I gotten up to here, to where I am, not knowing who I am, then finding out who I am could make a real difference in my life. I'm going to go for that. So I'm saying to you and me that in part, and in major part, that's a function of not making certain distinctions. Who you are, who I am is a car, which you steer. But nobody knows, well, steer with what? See, we don't make the distinctions. Well, it's just steering. What's the difference? It's just cattle. It's all brown. What's the difference? See, if the herdsman couldn't make the distinction, his cattle would be dead, and so would he. We don't make the distinction about ourselves, we will be dead. And most of us are dead. The living dead. Upright dead. People who are upright and dead. People eating the menu in life instead of the meal. And struggling valiantly to get some of the meal, but not being able to because of a lack of a certain distinction. This domain of knowing, the domain of knowing in which what you know is created. That sounds like, pretended, doesn't it? Or made up, or fantasized. I don't mean made up, fantasized, or pretended at all. I mean literally created, generated. I mean called forth. Physics is a very good example of calling forth. Einstein called forth a new domain. Never existed. He invented it. He didn't fantasize it. He didn't pretend it. He literally created a new context for physics called relativity. Humanity is strewn with those kinds of examples. No one ever makes a distinction that that's what they are. See, human rights. You and I think human rights, well, everybody knows about that. But it wasn't so long ago that didn't even exist. Human beings did not have rights. Kings had rights. Priests had rights. But human beings did not have rights. You and I don't know that human beings created from nothing the domain of human rights. They called it up. They languaged it. They communicated it. And communication has that power. It has the power not only to represent and not only to evoke, but literally to bring into being. And to know yourself. To know yourself. As a context creator is to transform the quality of your life. See, people are pretty stupid. They think they're going to do something that's going to change everything. If you do nothing, everything will change. If you do something, everything will change. Change is a constant. Things change. Do you ever notice that things change? They always change. It's a constant. Change is conserved. Things always change. And did you also notice that the more they change, the more they stay the same? Like, you think if only I could find the right job, then my life would be then everything would be made. And you get the right job, and it's wonderful for 2 weeks, and then it's like it always was. Well, it's if only I could get promoted. Well, if only I could find the right woman. Well, if only I could get rid of this woman. See, people think that life is a function of their circumstances, and for most poor suckers, it is a function of their circumstances. Because their experience is circumstantially derived, and they live in a vicious circle of concept-dominated experience reinforcing the concepts, and so on, and there's no real aliveness in the vicious circle. In that circle, there is no happiness. There are the symbols for happiness, but not happiness. In this circle, there is no love. There are the symbols for love, but no real love. There's no health. You understand by health, I don't mean the absence of sickness. I'm talking about real vitality. I'm talking about a body which is alive and equal to the tasks in front of it. I'm talking about being able to stay up for 2-3 days in a row when there's something worth staying up for. So there's no real health in this vicious circle, nor is there any real self-expression. And everybody in the room knows they got something inside themselves that they want to share, that they want to express. And everybody knows that they ain't expressing it, sharing it. You know that feeling, they don't get me, they don't understand me? It's real. They don't get you. And they don't understand you. I wish it weren't true. I wish it was just that you were fooling yourself. But they don't. Because what you got to share of yourself isn't possible in this limited reality. And you can't have the other reality without creating it. And most of you haven't got enough courage to create. I'm going to say one thing off the board for people in management. Maybe I'll say 2 things. I can't tell yet. At least one. I think there may be another idea that's tied to this. Essentially, people in management get paid for what isn't. Let's say it again. People in management get paid for what isn't, what is not. You know, you don't get paid if you're a manager or an executive for making what did happen. They pay you for what they want to happen or what will happen. So managers or executives get paid for what is not. Now, most managers and most executives don't know that. So, first off, it's a very good idea, if you're an executive, to know that what you're getting paid for is what isn't. So that you can start looking around at what isn't. Sounds stupid, doesn't it? Let me use a football analogy. In football, you got the quarterback. And the quarterback makes things happen. He gets paid for what isn't. He gets paid for putting the ball where it isn't. He doesn't get paid for moving the ball around or running the ball or calling the plays. Nobody gives a damn about that stuff. He might do that, but he gets paid for putting the ball where it isn't. And a good quarterback knows how to get the ball where it isn't. Then, on Monday, you pick up the newspaper and you read about the game that happened over the weekend. And that's called reporting or journalism. And it's very exciting for us, and we know all about what happened in the game, and it's terrific, right? You read about the game and you get the color and some of the inside story, and it explains why they did it. It's really beautiful. But if you ever noticed, it doesn't make quarterbacks any better. It has no impact on the quarterback. That whole language, that whole domain of conversation and communication has no impact on the quarterback. It might make him feel badly or make him feel good, but has no impact on his ability to put the ball where it isn't. So, the talk communicates. The coach is any good, it makes a big difference to the quarterback. So I make the distinction between coach communication and journalist communication. What I'm talking to you about with regard to management is called coaching management. Managers, executives, get paid for what is not. You want to be an outstanding executive. Pay very close attention to what is not. You're paying attention to it whether you like it or not. If you're an executive, if you know that that's what you're getting paid for, you can start doing it intentionally. Now, with respect to what is not, and I want you to, those of you who are in management, I'll do this quickly for those people who don't care about all this stuff. It's useful almost any place, actually, if you can make the translation. But I'll do it quickly anyhow, because I don't care much about it either. So most people in the realm of what do you do when you have something that isn't? And somebody says, listen, we don't have any XYZ, and your job is to get us some XYZ. What do you say? You say, well, let me do a study. Let me check it out. I don't know anything about XYZ. Let me check it out. I'll check it out. I'll see what it's all about, and I'll let you know. See, you think as a manager, as an executive, that what you get paid for is predictions. A prediction is a statement about the future which you can explain. Yeah, we will get XYZ for you, and the way we'll do it is we'll do this, and then we'll do this, and we'll do this, and that'll result in that. And we'll take that and move it over here, and after that, that'll be there. You got it. Yeah, I'm your man. I'll do it for you. Now, a good manager knows how to predict. A good manager knows how to gather the facts, analyze the facts, take a look at what the elements are, has enough experience to see the way it comes out, has enough education and training to know how things work. But that'll never make a great executive. Because the other domain in which to deal with what is not, besides prediction, is the domain called creation or declaration as a speech act. declaration. You want to be a really great executive? Start paying some attention not to what you can predict, but to what you can declare. Now watch, don't be an idiot about it. Because remember, communication requires a listener. If I'm going to make a declaration to the people with whom I work, I want it to be heard as something so. I don't mind if there's a little controversy around it. As a matter of fact, people who know me well know I like a little controversy around it. But I don't mean making fantastic declarations. I don't mean, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it no matter what it is. I don't mean that nonsense. I mean being able to take a stand, being able to make a declaration, being able to take responsibility can be either a predictive act or it can be a creative act, and really top-flight executives get paid for creation, not prediction. You can get any technician to produce a prediction. It takes a human being to produce a declaration, and specifically to coach people in it. You need to know the distinction between the domain of creation and the domain of prediction. If you're a little skeptical, you should be saying, yes, Werner, that's all a bunch more concepts. I got to go out and ride the bicycle on Monday. What is today? No, I have to go out and ride the bicycle Thursday. I don't want to read a book on riding the bicycle. Get me a bicycle. I got the balance on the bicycle tomorrow at work. So now it's time to learn something about this domain. I want you to know, remember I told you I wanted to talk in that little place in the whole realm of communication where the talking actually made a difference? When I say talking, I mean communicating, talking, and listening, where it makes a difference. That little place where talking and listening makes a difference is I call coaching. To distinguish it from the stories about it and the explanations about it and all of the rules about it and all the beliefs about it and all that stuff. So whether you can make the distinction or not, you and I have been communicating at a coaching level. Not at an explanatory level. I'm not interested in explanation here tonight. That's not my field. My field is not explanation. It's generation. My field is coaching, not journalizing. Now, we should be very clear before anybody is stupid enough to dismiss this domain that it's a very important domain. This domain of representation, of content, of explanation, the domain of circumstances. Let me tell you just how important it is. You can't get out of this room without it. See, because outside this room is only a concept for you and me, isn't it? There's nobody experiencing outside now. Outside is something represented in our mind, not actually being experienced by us. So we couldn't even get out of the room without the world of explanation, conceptualization, until somebody by accident fell against one of the doors. Then we could say, oh, hey, outside, I see it now. See, some nitwits, when they discovered that there was a realm of experience, said, we got to throw all that mind stuff and all that intellect away. Real stupid. Being half-assed is as bad whichever cheek you got left. All I'm saying is that you and I are very confident in this whole realm of conceptualization. We live in a culture and in a society which forces us to be confident in it in order to survive. So we know a lot about the realm of explanation, about the realm of content, about the realm of conceptualization. We know enough about the experiential realm, the process realm, to at least be aware of it. We heard tell that there's this thing called love and satisfaction and wholeness and being complete and alive, and there's this thing called happiness, and there are people whose lives are turned on, and they're, we've heard tell. We've read the menu. But we have no capacity to communicate in the contextual domain. So this is all about that tonight. See, a lot of people are worried about following what I'm saying. If you follow what I'm saying, you haven't gotten anything. Well, it's okay to follow what I'm saying, but don't worry about following it. That isn't where the communication occurs. What you create, what I said. And if you don't, you didn't get whatever value there was here tonight. So you've got to create, you've got to generate, you've got to call forth that there is a domain of communication and knowledge which is generative. And that it's possible for you as a human being to call forth, to create. From where? From your experience? No. From your concepts? Absolutely not. Then from where? The answer is two answers. One answer is nowhere. Three answers. One answer is nowhere. The second answer is nowhere and everywhere. And the third answer is from yourself. Now, I'm just going to make an assertion. I'm going to make a statement. I'm not going to prove this. I'm not going to communicate it. I'm just going to state it. It takes me 60 hours to communicate this. So I'm not going to communicate it tonight. But I am going to assert it. Until you know that who you are is empty and meaningless, you don't know anything. So I assert that until you know who you are is empty and meaningless, you don't know anything. Without knowing that, all things known are not known, but are only known to some end. Like everybody knows everything they know for a reason. They don't just know anything. And you can't know anything until you know that who you are is empty and meaningless. Now, look, that's a very stupid thing for me to say and leave like that. It's only going to bother people. So I'm stupid and you're bothered. But you see, until you get yourself as a space without meaning and without content, until you get yourself as a space without meaning, without content, there's no self from which to come. There's an identity from which to come, who you think you are, what you believe in, what you stand for, etc., 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 all that, your position. But until you know yourself as that without meaning and that without content, you have literally, you are without nothing from which to come. You've lost the nothingness which you must have in order to create your own life. So, like I said, that's a 60-hour discussion. We're going to leave that one aside. I should tell you the other half of it. You know, like a hand has a front and a back, it's still a hand. But if you keep slicing off the front, the instant you get the last slice of the front, the back disappears at the same time. So they're inseparable. So when I say who you are, when I say no one knows who they are until they know that who they are is empty and meaningless, that's the front of the hand. The back of the hand is who you are is the stand you take on yourself. Literally, who you are is the context you've created for your own life. And a context is always and only created. It's never inherited. It's never a matter of learning. It's never a matter of something you picked up. It's never a matter of accident. It's never a matter of habit. Always and only something created. The stand you take in yourself, the context for your life is always and only created. Most people don't have a context. They only have a condition. The condition is this vicious circle. That's the condition in which most of us live our lives. We live our lives from conceptually derived. Our experiences are conceptually derived, and our concepts are reinforced by those conceptually derived experiences. And we change all the time, and we think that that's life. We keep changing. We get older and smarter. We think that that's life. That isn't life. That isn't life. That is not life. That's not being alive. Change is not life. Rocks change. Life, being truly alive, is creative and generative. One creates one's own life. How? Very simple. By making a distinction called the domain of creation. You see, because generation, context, communication at this level is nothing more complex than drawing a distinction. A realm is brought into being by drawing a distinction. And by knowing that the realm you brought into being is neither experience nor content. So, you go home to your wife, walk in the door and say, how do I feel? Do I love her? God, I hope I do. Because I got to live with her. And I got to act like I love her. I hope the feeling's there. I hope the experience is there. See, and then people get to the point where they can't keep living with the circumstances when the experience isn't there. They don't know how to get out of it. They don't know what to do about it. They don't know how to fix it. There's no fixing it in the vicious circle. See, it's possible, it takes an enormous amount of courage, but it is possible to create the context of love for your relationships. When? Now. Where? Here. How do you do it? You don't do it by looking into the circumstances. You don't do it by looking into your feelings. You do it as an existential, self-expressive act. You call into existence a context of love in which you hold both your experience and your circumstances. And in that context, the experience, the process of your relationship begins to reflect the context which you've created for it, and that process, that action, begins to move the circumstances around until finally you've got an experience and circumstances that match the context you've created. I know you can't follow that. I know it doesn't make any sense. You want to make a difference in life? You want to stop just being concerned with what's important, like what people think of you and what your position is and how much money you got and your posture in the community and what you believe in and all that other stuff that ultimately doesn't make a difference, but is important. You want to play in the realm of difference making? Actually, I could have my fingers closed. You want to play in that realm of difference making? then you need to be willing to take a stand. That's something you can prove. And you ain't going to get any applause for it either. I'm going to read you 3 more quotes quickly, just so you're not looking for applause. If you want monuments, if you want agreement, if you want titles, if you want recognition, this is the wrong domain to function in. Stay down here in the vicious circle and get a good game going. But if you want the monument of having made a contribution to the quality of life, then this is the domain. Albert Einstein said, "Great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds." He knew that from experience. This is a quote from a tomb of a man who had a great impact on our civilization. It says, "There is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things." Finally, this is a piece of literature. This is a poet talking. "The great things of life are what they seem to be. And for that reason, strange as it may sound to you, are often very difficult to interpret." I say explain. "Great passions are for the great of soul, and great events can only be seen by those who are on a level with them. We think we can have our visions for nothing. We cannot. Even the finest and most self-sacrificing visions have to be paid for. Strangely enough, that is what makes them fine." So, what did all this mean tonight? Nothing. Wasn't meant to mean something. Wasn't meant for you to go out with a rule. Wasn't meant for you to go out with something to remember. Wasn't meant that tomorrow, when you get into a certain situation, you say, "Oh, I remember, he said do this." Wasn't meant that when you have a discussion tomorrow with your friends that you have some smart, new, slick things to say. You try talking about this stuff and see how smart and slick you come out. Now let me tell you where I measure the validity of our being together. I measure the validity of our being together and the quality of your life over the next few weeks. I don't measure it in whether you like what God said or not. I don't measure it in whether you remember what God said or not. I don't measure it in whether you understood what God said or not. I measure it in the quality of your life over the next couple of weeks. So I have a few things to say in leaving. One of the things is a real, honest-to-God thank you. I mean, I really mean thank you. First off, thank you for your time and your attention. That's always a gift. Nobody owes their time or attention. But something much more fundamental, something much more powerful than that. You know, I really want to thank you for being here. I have to say here because that's English. I actually mean I want to thank you for being. This has been very real for me tonight, being with you. The opportunity to be together, to have a relationship, to communicate, to share ourselves. See, I did all the talking. That's unfortunate. I hope that the real action was not going on in what you were looking at up here, but was going on in what you were creating for yourself, what you were generating for yourself. I wish I were better able to communicate the depth of my gratitude for the opportunity that you've created for us. This has been a privilege for me and a great gift. Thank you very much, and good night. is, I think I mentioned having a magic wand, and if I didn't mention having a magic wand, I now mention to you having a magic wand. People say, well, how do you create this space of ecstasy? You know, how do you bring this ecstasy, this joy, this pleasure as an expression of love, this wholeness, this completion, this unconditional love into the relationship? And you do it by waving a magic wand. I mean, obviously, there's no other way to possibly do it. So I want to tell you about the magic wand. What I want to tell you about the magic wand is that in the ordinary course of events, in order to bring something about, you need to establish a process. I'll just repeat myself. In the ordinary course of events, in order to bring something about, you need to establish a process. In other words, in order for me to get from here to there, I can't do it all at once. I have to do it one step at a time. And by handling it one step at a time, I can, as a matter of fact, be from here to there. So all I need to do is to be willing to establish a process, to manufacture a process, to produce a process. And by a process, I can, in fact, accomplish something. Now, that's the ordinary space in which we live. There is, however, an extraordinary space in which we also live. Now, I want to be clear that I didn't say to you that there's an extraordinary space which you can achieve. Let me be very clear that I did not say that there's an extraordinary space which you can achieve. I said that we live both in the ordinary space and we live in this extraordinary space. But it's like having the keys to an automobile in your pocket. If you don't ever go out and put it in the ignition, you don't get to drive the automobile. It isn't enough that the automobile is there. You actually have to know about it and use it. So I want to turn you on to a quality of the space in which you live, which could be called the extraordinary quality. And that is that at the base of it all, fundamentally, what's so is so by your consideration alone. Now, for most of it, you have to deal with it in the ordinary way. In other words, with respect to this chair, which is really rather ordinary stuff, I have to deal with this in an ordinary way. In order to accomplish something, in order to achieve something with the chair, I need to set up a process. So that if I want to take the chair away with me, I have to take the back off and fold the arms up, fold the legs up, and then I can take it away with me. But I have to do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, this linear progression, this progressional thing in order to achieve something with the chair. However, it is also that in the space in which you live, much of what is there is a function not of any process, but as a function of your consideration alone. That is to say, whether this chair is good or bad is a function only of your consideration. At any rate, a great deal of what exists in our life exists as a function of our consideration. If you consider it to be so, it's so. If you consider, listen, by the wave of a wand, if you consider that I love you, I love you. Now, you may not be able to consider me down there on the floor standing next to you. It may be that that's the part of your life that works in the ordinary way. Because that's pretty ordinary, standing next to someone. To be loved is extraordinary. And it's a function of the extraordinary space. And it happens as a function of your consideration alone. By merely considering that I love you, I love you. So you've got this universe in which you can create by consideration alone. I call that the magic wand.
And it is the instrument by which one creates this ecstatic quality in one's relationship. You imbue the relationship with ecstasy. You create in the relationship ecstasy. Now I caution you that you cannot create in opposition to anything. Listen, you cannot create in opposition to anything. So that if there's something in the relationship which you would consider to be inconsistent with ecstasy, you can't create ecstasy in opposition to that thing. You can't say, it's horrible, but I'm going to make it ecstatic. This is not act as if. This is not pretend. This is not go through the motions. This is something far senior to that. So you can't create by consideration. You can't create by magic wand in opposition to anything. You can, however, include anything in that which you create. So to create ecstasy in your relationships does not mean that any particular thing has to be in your relationship or not in your relationship. There can be any circumstance and any condition presently existing in your relationships, and you can wave the magic wand of ecstasy. As long as you're willing to include in the ecstasy, as long as you're willing for that circumstance or that consideration to be a function of the ecstasy, to in fact manifest the ecstasy, to express the ecstasy. And your willingness to allow any condition or any circumstance of your relationship to express the ecstasy is a part of the creation of the ecstasy. So one creates ecstasy by waving one's magic wand. One does not create ecstasy by doing something. I am ecstatic because I am ecstatic. I love you because I love you. It is so because you consider it to be so. So, to master this space, to master the space of ecstasy, to master the space of love, one must be willing to create by consideration. You need to be willing to do that. You need to be willing to create a context around the existent circumstances. And as you've heard from the people who've expressed it, it often takes a lot of courage. But what if it turns out that you were a fool? Well, fool is probably not down very far from where you are if you're worried about it. I mean, what the hell? It's probably worth taking the chance. You come out of this space, you rewrite all the sex manuals. Promise. All that technology about sex is based on attempting to get to ecstasy. They ain't seen nothing yet from people coming from ecstasy. No kidding. Honest. No kidding. I want to be clear about your expression as a sexual being transforming as a function of your willingness to come from ecstasy, to come from being whole and magnificent and complete, to bring to your sexual expression your own ecstasy, instead of trying to get it out of it. So you need to be willing to wave your magic wand to create this ecstasy. To be, you don't wait to go home to find out if this person that you live with now has got you absolutely blown away. No! You come from being blown away. See, you want to tell me how your relationships are. I don't give a damn how they are. That isn't what this is about. This is about where you're coming from. It's about who you are. It's about the context of the relationship, the space of the relationship. It doesn't make any difference how it is. At this level, you get to create how it is. And you can come out of this into your relationship. You come out of ecstasy into your relationship to create ecstasy. You come out of ecstasy, out of pleasure as an expression of love, out of celebration, to create the experience of celebration and love and ecstasy. This is about lighting the fire, not warming yourself by it. Hi.
Hello.
How you doing?
Hello, Werner.
Hello.
My name is Anna Lois.
Thank you, Anna.
And I haven't the slightest idea what I'm going to say.
I know the feeling.
And I wanted to give myself the opportunity to be up here and create.
Wonderful.
And Werner, I love you, and I just love creating that.
Yes, that's beautiful. That's wonderful.
Yay! Oh, wow.
Too big, too bright, too wonderful, too magnificent for most people.
It is. Oh, I love
That's
it.
great.
And I want you to know, though this includes this morning also, that this is the most validating experience of me, probably of my whole life, and I love it, and I got it.
That's terrific. Beautiful. You know, it reminds me it was such a perfect expression of that one poem I read by E.E. Cummings about all the wisdom being nothing when compared to, I think he talked about a wink of your eye. Yeah, something about violets, that's right. But you know, it's very interesting. She got up there and she did exactly what I was talking about. I mean, she stuck her neck out. She was alive. She was real. She was magnificent. And she wasn't inhibited. She wasn't inhibited by the normal things which people consider when they're doing that. Got to be coming from ecstasy. It's wonderful. You know, I can picture people's minds saying, but what will they think? You want me to tell you what they'll think? They'll think terrible things about you. What the hell do you think they were going to think? They think terrible things about you anyhow. That's what thinking's about. It's about terrible things. Thinking's all about buts. You want to move them. You want to inspire them. You want to give them the opportunity to be in touch with and experience and express their own magnificence. The hell with what they think. You know, I don't mean put down what they think. I mean allow them to think it. And what a wonderful expression of love that you doubt me. I mean, hell, I'm used to those usual expressions of love. You come up with something unusual. Let's not make that commonplace, however. No, that was beautiful. That was so remarkable. God damn. What a love affair. Hi, over there. What is your name?
My name's Kermit.
Hi, Kermit.
Yeah, and I had something I wanted to share, and that came out of the relationship that I've had with you for a long time, and I've really been complete that relationship is complete.
It's beautiful.
And I want to take the opportunity now to voice something that came up for me today. Because it was complete, I thought that, well, why do I feel uncomfortable sometimes when I get this sometimes experience I got today? And that was a little bit of overwhelm, a little threat. And I don't know if I got it all, but I got some part of it. And it looked like a resentment somewhere that in all my life, to get what I got, I seemed to have to effort at it, and I seemed to have to do something spectacular to get it. And this was free. And out of that, if I were to really acknowledge that, then I have to get clear that I want to acknowledge you personally for that gift, for being responsible for me putting that mirror up so I can look into it.
That's beautiful, Kermit.
And again, it was just something, I'm having difficulty getting it out now, and that is to give that acknowledgement to another man who was something that I was jealous of, I guess. And then to get the bottom line that I got that from another man who was a white man, and I think at one point in time that made some kind of difference. I just wanted to get that off. Thank you.
Kermit, you know, it's in the normal course of events. First off, I do want to acknowledge your courage and your honesty and your directness and your straightforwardness and your openness. And I want to take then a little bit deeper, because I think that really all comes as a function of recognizing your own magnificence. You know, when you take a look in your life, you've got lots of things to give away. To be able to give away your jealousy, to be able to give away your resentment, to be able to give away your prejudice. What an incredible gift to give that away. I really salute you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Listen, can you get it? It's easy to give away your love. You know, easy to give that away. Easy to give away your support and your appreciation. Very difficult to give away those things like jealousy and resentment and prejudice. Incredibly difficult. Enormous gift. Is it possible that you don't have something to contribute? Not possible. Yes. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, Werner. My name is Jonathan.
Good to see you, Jonathan.
I really want you to get, and everybody to get, how utterly absurd, ludicrous it is for me to be in a position where I could be up here acknowledging my feeling of relationship with you and my feeling that I've gotten of your integrity and your caring and concern and your love. If you can imagine a place utterly contradictory of that space, a place utterly mind-bound and totally rational and unwilling to come from that celebration. my halfway position that I'm at now would
Yeah,
look like wild celebrations to you.
No, it's wonderful. I'm telling you, it's great, because the bigger they are, the harder they fall, and you're really beautiful. You know, it's big enough to get out of, to get off of that space you were talking about. And you see, it's not that, you know, what I'd like you to get is that coming from that kind of reserve and being big enough to get off that, not to give it up, but to be big enough to expand, to include the celebration, is just a remarkable, wonderful thing. So those of you who are stuck deeply, you've got something really beautiful to contribute. Thank you. Go on. It's great.
Where I am is this, in relationship. My mind is chattering and yelling and fighting and going down screaming, and you know, I'm willing to make that stab and commitment into coming from ecstasy and joy. And my mind keeps saying, what does it look like? And Werner says, well, it doesn't look like nothing, but it's got to look like something. And I have this sense. My feeling of relationship with you, I get an analogy between your relationship with me and my relationship with my father and a woman in my life and others who I don't relate to, or who won't relate to me, rather, in the sense that they won't play with me, that they will withhold and deny and not be intimate with me. And I just wonder what your experience is, how it looks to you and how it could look to me, where I come to them from that kind of love and acceptance, and there's no play on the other side. They won't play.
Yeah, you see that? Look, I want you to know
there's no relationship.
Well, okay. You see, my answer is not at all complex. It's really very simple, and its power is not brilliance of the response, but in the fact that what I'm about to tell you is very real. I'm telling you the truth. And I'm not telling you the truth just for me. I'm telling you what's really so about those people. I'm telling you that their inability to respond, their bound-uppedness, is the highest expression of love which they can muster. Now look, you may be smarter than they are, they may be smarter than you are. You may be richer than they are, they may be richer than you are. You may be more clever, more communicable, they may be more clever, more communicable. None of those things, about none of those things can I speak. Or will I know the answer? About this I know the answer. They have the capacity for love. They have a capacity for love like yours and like mine, which is absolute. The only thing bound up in their life is the expression of that capacity. So what you're getting is a bound expression of an absolute love for you. And if you can accept that as their love for you, and if you can be in ecstasy about that expression, if you can be joyful and celebrate that expression, your joy, your ecstasy, your being blown away by your relationship with them, I promise you will provide the heat necessary to melt whatever's there. Miracles will happen.
I just want you to know that I'm willing to come from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I see it.
I really look forward to going that extra.
Man, you are so beautiful. You are so real. I can't tell how much I appreciate your sharing. Wonderful. I wanted to share with you where this came from, and I wanted to share with you where this was going, because I think it creates a context around it that makes this context of ecstasy clearer and more meaningful. That is to say, what is the context of this context of ecstasy? what makes ecstasy possible, what allows for ecstasy, is when your life is committed to a purpose larger than those things which are in your life. It's very interesting, and as you know, I've gotten a chance really to examine people's lives and a lot of people's lives about the intricacies of making life work, about the difficulties and intricacies, and there are these wonderful, complex, wonderful techniques and theories about how to make your life work, how to make it, actually work for you. And it's very interesting because all of the nonsense in your life is swept away when you commit your life to a bigger purpose than your life. Suddenly, my neuroses are gone, my psychoses are gone. Now, it may be that I'm so stuck in my problems that I'm not able to commit myself to a bigger purpose. And I want to recognize the possibility of that and support the people who are in that position and transcending the problems and working their way through the problems. But for most of us, nothing more difficult, nothing more complex than to commit our lives to a purpose bigger than our lives is necessary to really shift the whole spectrum of the problems in our lives so that suddenly these problems are really not problems, they're simply additional things to deal with. I want to read a quote to you from George Bernard Shaw, which really sums up the sense which I have, this sense which I have about what makes life work for people ultimately. This is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, the being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. For the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch, which I've got a hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. And for me, that is the context of this context called ecstasy. It's the space from which it comes, and it's the place to which it's devoted. And it is what gives it meaning. It is what dignifies it. It is what sanctifies it. It's what makes it real. It's what makes it honest. It's what makes it tough. It's what makes it straightforward. It's what makes it love. I started off by reading poetry, and I want to finish by reading you one last poem. This is also from E.E. Cummings, who I want to acknowledge for his contribution to tonight.